Bang! Hello, folks, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday. Today is October 15th, and wow, look at that. We're already halfway through my favorite month, but it's looking like we're going to get an exciting close to this month. Everyone's been talking about Q4, and as Doc's name suggests, we're hitting that 60K level here today. Some exciting stuff to start the morning. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about a whole lot more today. Before we dive into it, Doc, CJ, how are you gentlemen doing this morning?
I'm very well. CJ, how about you?
Very well. I mean, a little tired, up late last night, a lot of big price action. But other than that, great. 60K, awesome stuff. Also, I mean, the primary news catalyst, and I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on this as well, is that, it looks like a futures Bitcoin ETF is likely not going to face, restrictions from the SEC, reported by Bloomberg. So, initial reactions. I know a lot of people in the chat last night were fired up about that. They were like, oh, here we go. And as soon as that happened, we went from like 58, 59 to 60. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, very exciting stuff, CJ. And, this is almost like I keep going back to what we were talking about in October of 2020, what we were seeing then. But now what we're seeing is like that times 10, the amount of ETFs that are being applied for, the amount of on-ramps for new institutions that people are looking to establish. It is like what we saw back in October of 2020, but just more extreme. So I'm excited for what that potentially means for price action. But we got some interesting charts to take a look at today. So what do you guys say we dive right in?
Let's do it.
Also, real quick before we do, I got to say, Chris Vincentini, look at this. Wonder if he'll be Dr. 60K today. Said this before he saw the name. And yes, he nailed it. Well done.
Nailed it.
But you guys want to dive into some charts? CJ, I know you got some interesting technicals you want to share. Should we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really just coming off of a bullish engulfing candle. And like what we have said previously in the week, not a whole lot has changed in terms of support and resistance levels. We really are now at the precipice of that final resistance level before a true new all-time high. I'm going to show the weekly chart in a moment here, but it's kind of interesting. It almost already looks like we've created a new all-time high on the weekly chart based on candle body closes. But nonetheless, really beyond 60 to 59K here, what we're kind of fumbling through this resistance level right now, there is very light resistance overhead anywhere really until our next all-time high, which would be 65K, pretty light resistance. But then ultimately what I like to do is go over to the weekly chart, and like I said, I mean, it almost looks like we're very even closer to a breakout to new all-time highs based on the weekly chart. But if we go here to some fib retracements and extensions, we can get an idea of some of our first price target levels and extensions for the bull market. And of course, you can see that 58K level to 60K price channel that's been acting as a lot of resistance. We're slowly creeping up through it right now. But as you can see beyond that, we don't have any Fibonacci resistance from a macro perspective until about 75K to 103K. So, is that where we end up in the next few weeks? We shall see. But these are the critical levels that I think are interesting. And yeah, I guess I'll pass it back to you guys now.
And speaking to those critical levels, CJ, the one we're testing right now, this 60K level, is a very, very critical level. And I think it's interesting to note kind of how we're retesting it, what market conditions we're seeing. So I just wanted to quickly share a couple charts here that I think are painting a pretty interesting picture for, what could happen if we get rejected from this 60K level, or what may happen if we break above and continue to climb. So I just want to share a couple charts here. And I want to start with just the Bitcoin chart. Taking a look at this chart, obviously the 60K level is a critical level of not just psychological resistance, but also profit taking, given the price action we've seen in the preceding 2 weeks. Whenever you get a move like this, basically that's a straight up move. It's natural for profit taking to occur at these psychologically significant levels. And that's what we're seeing here at about 60K. Also, some people like Josh Nardi in the chat were kind of highlighting this upward trending channel right here. And this, kind of perfectly coincides with what we're seeing in terms of resistance at this level right here. it's perfectly plausible that we could get rejected from this level, come back down to retest some lower levels before continuing to climb up in this trend channel. I think that's a likely scenario, and I want to talk about a couple reasons why. One thing right here, first and foremost, is the RSI. As you can see, we are reaching overbought levels here in terms of the RSI, back above 70 for the first time since, well, I guess we went above 70 a few days ago, but now we're significantly above 70, which historically has led to a bit of profit taking and a bit of loss of the momentum that we are currently seeing. But further, I think what's more important is sort of the overall market dynamics. And that's why I want to take a look at Bitcoin dominance. And Bitcoin dominance, we were talking a lot about it earlier in the week because Bitcoin was running and the alts were not moving, which is relatively unusual. But whenever that happens, you should always look to Bitcoin dominance to kind of see, what is happening exactly with the market, where it could potentially be headed, and if there is still momentum in that Bitcoin trend. And what we're seeing now, I think, is very interesting. We are currently retesting the level at which we got rejected just 4 days ago on this TD Cell 9. And although we're hitting it with some strong momentum here, this level of 46% has historically been a very critical level for Bitcoin dominance. So the potential for getting rejected from this level, I think, is relatively high when you consider the fact that, one, this is a critical level in itself of Bitcoin dominance. Also, we're seeing 60K hold up as a psychologically critical level for Bitcoin. And third, we have technical indicators like the RSI telling us that momentum may be exhausted. Now, one thing that also is worth noting is kind of what this reversal meant for the market, right? We saw this just 4 days ago now. We topped on a TD Cell 9, came back down. And one of the big winners in that, obviously, was Ethereum. So I think that today, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, kind of with the Doge of the day, but I think today could be a good day to look at ETH because look at this. 3 days ago, when Bitcoin dominance started to turn down, that's when ETH finally started to tick up. Now today, Bitcoin dominance is rallying. ETH is, kind of stagnating a little bit here, but it's right below this previous swing high. Bitcoin dominance is looking set to perhaps reverse. And I think that bodes well for ETH, considering what we saw just in the last few days here. So that's a lot of talking, but I think it's important to note Bitcoin dominance here, especially because we're coming up on a couple critical levels. But I will pass it back to you, gentlemen.
Well, I'll put this one in the category, guys, of I don't know why anybody would, and that is second biggest mortgage provider in the United States stops accepting crypto payments. First of all, I'm not sure that I would pay a mortgage with Bitcoin. You could, but most of us want to hold on to it. But I get the idea that maybe that particular person that would be attracted to that might not want to convert out of, crypto into fiat and instead just use that as like almost barter. Here's this much Bitcoin. It's traveling at this price right now, and you're willing to take it over here. There's a lot of fluctuation, as we've already seen today, and we see almost every day in the price of all coins, a lot more generally than you see in the price of fiats like the dollar or the euro or whatever. But in particular, guys, I'm kind of miffed as to why, with the world on the verge of perhaps seeing a Bitcoin ETF, which would further, validate these currencies, in particular that currency, that coin, Bitcoin. I got to wonder how that United Wholesale Mortgage decides, I guess, after just trying to grab some headlines, that nope, we're out. I don't understand really. Number one, why they would get in without going to something like, why, since everybody flips in and out of Tether, right? I mean, most people are going into USDC, USDT, whatever, when they're not in their crypto, because you don't want to go back into fiat. Why you wouldn't just say, yep, we'll just take that. But instead they wanted to take something that might fluctuate up and down. If you're talking about a couple $100,000 in a mortgage, obviously if Bitcoin moves $2,000, you'd be getting either 4,000, 8,000 more or 4,000 or 8,000 less by the time that particular trade settled in that 10-minute window, maybe. I mean, again, I don't really see why they would have done it in the first place, or now why they're getting out of it after deciding, yeah, let's do that, unless they've already found out what I just described. And that is, there's a little volatility around that thing that maybe the seller doesn't want to take when you're doing your mortgage for that house.
Yeah, John, I think you're spot on. I think they're, trying to grab some headlines. I remember this news came out like it wasn't that long ago at all. It was just a few months ago. I remember CJ reporting on it, and yeah, they tried to grab some headlines. Obviously, there were some implications in taking Bitcoin they weren't ready for, and yeah, they learned that the hard way. But speaking of making headlines, Doc, I want to toss something to you. David points out in chat, Coin, Mara, Riot, SI, all really ripping. Have you been looking at any of these, trading in and out of any of these crypto-related equities?
Yep, I have. And my favorite, guys, it's a shameless plug because I love the lady that runs it, but Hut8, HUT. And the reason I like it so much is they don't sell any. So they're a Bitcoin miner. They've got a lot of sophisticated equipment that you guys would know about. And you look at that from the end of September, stock was $7.80. Today it's $3 higher than that. But we know that, $3 on an $8 stock is a lot. That's made a heck of a move. Obviously, you could overlay Bitcoin and see how Bitcoin's done over that same time. But these guys just mine Bitcoin and hold it. They are not a seller. So a lot of miners, of course, have to sell some coin here and there to pay for their activities, including, their employees and so forth. These folks over at Hut8, they don't do that. They raise the money, they hold the coins, and this is another one of those that, like our friend Jordan was pretty bullish about.
I think we lost Doc.
Well, until John comes back, I see a really interesting question from one of our guys in the chat, Caesar. I really like this one. Do you think the ETF on Monday may create a sell the news event? Any thoughts on that one, Monty?
I don't think it'll be a sell the news event. I think, people may be a bit let down in the sense that, there won't be, I don't think it'll be necessarily an immediate effect, but I think whenever you have these, all these applications stacking up, it speaks to the pent up demand, from that side, the institutional side, and also the pent up demand for these companies to create these ETFs, to create these on ramps in order to get involved in the crypto space. So, I don't think that in either direction on Monday we'll see too significant of a move, because I think that ultimately this will take time. If an ETF does get approved, or if they more likely most of them get rejected as they have been, either way, I don't expect it to be too big of a move. I think that ultimately we'll see a slower grind up effect from these ETFs as that capital slowly gets injected into the space. But in the meantime, I don't expect too much of a move based on any of the headlines that we see Monday morning. But curious to hear your thoughts as well.
We lost you there for a minute, John, but glad you're back now.
Sorry about that. I just did a speed check on my, I don't know why we dropped, because I'm showing, 100 gigabit or, 100 megabyte speed upload, download. I don't know what the hell's going on, obviously. But one thing I would stress that you guys probably did already is that if approved, and I do give it a decent chance, this is going to be a future, not on the. So in other words, if they approve a Bitcoin future, it would likely be a Bitcoin future on the futures that trade at the CME, rather than the hundreds of disparate, and I didn't say desperate, I said disparate exchanges around the world. Obviously, the CME would be a big beneficiary of that, And a lot of those others would, be the ones that are feeding the quotes into and helping the folks at the CME actually make those markets. But nonetheless, that's what I would think, guys. If they approve this, it'll likely be an ETF on a Bitcoin future that trades domestically.
Yeah, that seems to be the direction it's going in. But one thing that's interesting, I think, is the potential for um, you know, institutions, big players, they're relatively unaffected by news-related events, and we've been talking so much about how this recent rally has been mostly driven by big players and has been Bitcoin got up to 60K with very little retail participation. I think potentially, actually, an announcement of an ETF could be that positive news catalyst in the sense that, it'll be on CNBC, people will be watching it, Bitcoin will be making headlines because this rally in the last couple of weeks has been relatively quiet. So I think some positive news coverage might be good in the sense that it could bring in some more retail traders, which seems to be the one piece of the puzzle that's kind of missing right now. But with that being said, I think based on what we're seeing with Bitcoin dominance, could be an interesting weekend for the alts. So, any doges of the day that you guys will be looking at as we enter the weekend here?
Well, I would think that Cardano's got a lot of gas in the tank, especially at 216 a coin right here. Solana it hit my target this morning. It hit 160 something. So I did take some profits this morning in Solana. Still have it. Wish they had options because I would definitely just be in call spreads for Solana. But because I bought it, as I said, in the 140 range, and my target was 160, 165, and we already hit 160. So took about 60% of that coin off. I know you have made some good calls here on things like Polkadot, and I'm wondering if maybe some of these, like your Luna trade from the other day, I think that one might be getting ready to make a move, coming off this low right here at about 36.60, something like that. So if I had to, Monty, I'd probably say Luna, even though you guys have already done that one this week.
Yeah, John, I like that pick a lot. You mentioned Luna Dot. I definitely like those picks. And I guess I already talked a little bit about my Doge of the day, but I'll kind of reiterate it real quick. I like ETH at this point, based on what I was, talking about in terms of what we're seeing from Bitcoin. ETH is relatively oversold relative to Bitcoin. And what we saw last time when Bitcoin dominance hit that critical level of 46%, it was very good for ETH. And to your point with those other alts, John, assets like DOT, like Cardano, those big blue chip assets will be the first to get that rotation of capital through ETH. Then they'll get into those downstream low cap assets like Sheeb, like Stormex. But in the meantime, I think assets like Luna, like DOT, like ADA, will be the first to see that speculation after it flows into ETH. So I like those picks. I'll be watching all of those, but my true Doge of the day this weekend will be ETH. How about you, Mr. CJ Reichel?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we've been talking about that inverted head and shoulders pattern on ETH like all week, and now it's actually starting to come to fruition, as well as seeing Bitcoin break out. So that obviously doesn't hurt. One thing that I like in terms of Doge of the day in the crypto market, I've been buying Solana a little bit, been buying off of this support level. But in terms of the Bitcoin related equities, I wanted to highlight Silvergate because we've had a very nice run up in this particular Bitcoin related stock. I would really be interested in looking at some of the options and entering some bullish positions potentially going into the end of the day or looking ahead towards next week. And namely, that's because we have a massive all-time high in terms of Silvergate short interest that has come into the market. And so if Bitcoin continues this trend, there could be a lot of firepower from these shorts that are going to need to buy back the stock if this trade goes against them. So for that reason, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on Silvergate. While it does not trade 24/7, 365 like the collective crypto market, it'll be cool to see what happens on Monday based on Bitcoin's price action this weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really interesting play. Thank you for that, CJ. And thank you guys all so much for watching. It should be a really interesting weekend. And as always, CJ and I will be in the chat hanging out. If you'd like to join us, you can try it out at marketrebellion.com/try crypto. We got a global community of traders from all around the world, 24/7 chat where people share their insights, an extensive education curriculum, pro charting service, and a whole lot more. Definitely head over there and check it out. You can try your first week for just $7 at marketrebellion.com/try crypto. Also, if you're looking for a place to trade your crypto, definitely check out Invest Voyager at investvoyager.com, where you can trade 60 plus assets commission free and earn up to 12% on assets like DOT and up to 10% on USDC. So head over there and check them out. And if you do, use code REBEL25 when you sign up for $25 free in crypto. But that's all we got for today. Like I said, we'll be hanging out in the room, so feel free to stop by and ask some questions. But otherwise, have a great weekend, and we will see you again at the cocktail hour tonight and then on Monday. So have a great weekend and take care.